Hi everyone, I'm Will Critchlow and I'm very excited this week to be speaking to Aleyda Solis, who many of you will know puts out a phenomenal weekly email newsletter at SEO FOMO and has been really leading the way, I think, in talking about the practicalities of what folks should be doing to optimize for whatever we're calling it this week. Generative engine optimization, GEO, seems to be sticking this week, so we'll go with that maybe. So actual practical tips and practical advice, and we're going to get into all of that. But where we're going to start is some conversations that Aleyda and I were having when we were both in New York recently for SEO Week, and we gave adjacent presentations. So we were both talking about e-commerce and e-commerce discovery, e-commerce search, particularly for very large retailers and e-commerce websites. And we had to do a little bit of coordination to make sure that we gave complimentary presentations, which I think we did. And Aleyda was talking very much from the perspective of starting by looking at the ways that the Google search results have changed and are changing. So that's where we're going to start today. So Aleyda, thank you for joining me. And I'd love to start just by hearing your thoughts on this movement of Google becoming your product listing page, Google really wanting to be the category page for these brands.
Indeed, 100%. This is what I have been witnessing in the last couple of years, especially. We can see this much more in the US. I have to say that in the UK and across all other European markets, and I was able to confirm that with data beyond empirical observations and smaller run tracking and position shifts over time and traffic, and more importantly, traffic shift over time that I have been doing myself with similar web data too. But yes, if you take a look and you compare the SERPs from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and today, you can see like a very important, meaningful difference in the inclusion of the filter sidebar, the main topic navigations at the top, the product carousel that trigger the product knowledge panel. That only purely that in itself is pretty much a PLP. Is already a PLP that is ready to let's say bridge the user directly to the PDP, to the bottom of the funnel directly without having to leave the SERPs in order to browse and pretty much navigate through the decision making of the specific products that the user might want. And of course, this has an impact in terms of where you should allocate your efforts, where you should be paying attention and to double down in order to maximize the performance and then on the other hand, realistically, what you can do in order to keep connecting with the users in a way that makes sense with those type of SERPs, because the static, let's say, 10 blue links have gone in this particular case, not necessarily because of AI overviews, which we have seen a lot of the informational players in the publishing space have been complaining so much about. In this particular space, we haven't seen in e-commerce, shopping, etc., haven't seen that having such a very high impact like that. However, we do have the product carousel that have, let's say, had these sort of similar roles in not taking the traffic completely, but shifting where the traffic is going. So in a war in which literally you have 5 players per row, or you versus 4 other competitors per row in the product carousel, how you can attract and maximize click-through rate, because the level of competition is completely different, right? So yeah, all of those, let's say, criteria and shift and thoughts, this is how I focus my presentation, and I believe that is what makes a little bit e-commerce a little bit different of other industries, and in general what the search might look like for informational type of queries.
Yeah,
in general.
yeah. You started with something very important there, actually, which is our audiences. But both of us, we probably have folks in the UK and Europe as well as in the US. And I think if you're outside the US, it's definitely worth turning on your VPN and doing some product searches in the US markets just to see what probably the future of product search looks like, I think. And yeah, if you haven't seen it firsthand, it's definitely worth playing with that. While we're speaking about product search, that history, right, going through Google Shopping, and it's been on quite a journey, really. I think going back through being completely paid at one point, and then back to organic and into a kind of blended. I think it's basically paid inclusion at this point, which is fascinating if you go back and read old opinions from the Google founders when Yahoo was doing paid inclusion, for those of us who've been around for a long time. But one of the things that's really interesting is it's also product feed powered. So we're talking about the user experience in the search results here, but as a website, as an e-commerce vendor, the merchant center and the product feed has become increasingly important in this world.
Yeah, indeed. And I have been very impressed of how Google has pretty much positioned themselves or positioned that integration to facilitate it, to make it like so straightforward with Shopify, with WooCommerce, Wix, any platform out there, even CMSs that are not necessarily what you will say are very e-commerce focused, but they have made it so straightforward to integrate your product with their merchant center. Of course, trying to incentivize a little bit of more like the paid side of things, but pretty much providing such a big advantage by you doing it so that you cannot miss it, and you shouldn't miss it. I mean, if the benefit is to be able to be shown much more in those product packs in the main SERPs, not even in the shopping tab, but in the main SERPs.
That's right.
You cannot do that, of course. And then additionally, all of these additional features and that allow you to further specify what the product is about, and additional details that we know that more and more, for example, the color of and the sizes, and for all of these additional product characteristics that Google has started to also launch and not necessarily launch, but to give support to additional properties for the product structure data, because they want to incentivize you to specify all of that additionally to be able to surface those type of products right away, much more like with a higher accuracy, etc., etc. So yes, if you had asked me like 5 years ago, it's like your PDP scrollability going to be done through not even XML sitemaps, not even good internal linking, but through a merchant center feed. I would say, not necessarily. It seems so much of an additional hassle, but in this particular case, they have made it so straightforward that you cannot say no. The benefit is very big indeed. I think that they understood that in order to be able to compete with Amazon, they needed to do something like this. Now they have all of the data. I saw some reactions when ChatGPT launched their additional shopping functionality, whatever. And I was like, I remember you commented on the post that I did about it too. It's like, Google has all the data, Google has all of the integrations, all of the feeds, a shopping knowledge graph or product knowledge graph that OpenAI doesn't have. They have started to, let's say, integrate with third parties, but still today, the way that they showcase product results or shopping results is pretty much just surfacing the feeds, the third-party feeds that they have with through partners, without even reorganizing or re-ranking based on what they have documented. So it's like, yeah, I mean, Google has so much advantage that I believe that they are the best, the platform that is in the best position to be able to take advantage of that and take it to the next level, even with very specialized AI mode integration, better features that are surfacing in the first in the SERPs as a default experience that blends what we see with the product packs with AI type of shopping personalized agents of sorts. So I'm very looking forward to that, and I believe that will tend to be much more of the future rather than ChatGPT necessarily as a new platform. I must say.
After a couple of missteps, I think Google has been doing some really impressive stuff, and we'll come more onto Google's AI mode in a bit. But I'm inclined to agree. I think it's very, very interesting seeing, for the first time, seeing competition. Well, the first time in recent years, seeing the kind of serious competition forcing innovation at pace out of Google. And I actually think it's really good for the ecosystem and for users in the long run. Especially, we're talking here about e-commerce. There's some different challenges in media that maybe we'll come back to. But on the product discovery side, I think this innovation is superb. It's actually, I was very interested to see, I think I commented on this somewhere, that of all of the missteps that you would expect Google to make, we saw them being a bit hesitant and a bit cautious around, essentially about the brand values. They would, because they're the incumbent, because they're huge, they have to be so much more cautious in rolling this stuff out than some of the startups.
Yeah.
But I was really interested to see them kind of forget to put links in. In product search, it seems like the URL is the thing. You can't just send someone to the homepage. You can't just mention the brand. Yeah. If you're recommending a particular pair of running shoes, or you're mentioning a particular coffee maker, give me the damn link. And it's so interesting seeing the first versions roll out without some of those links. And I actually think, well, we're already seeing them including them more and more. But before we get into AI, you said something else that I wanted to just pull out for the audience that was really interesting. When I first saw the Merchant Center product feed specification, the thing that I was most interested in was the fact that they didn't just want your canonical URLs. In an XML sitemap, in internal linking, in everywhere, every bit of SEO we've ever done, everything has been about single canonical URLs. And the Merchant Center feed is not that, right? They explicitly want all like you say, all the size variations, all the color variations, all this kind of stuff. And I'm very interested in where that trend goes as relates to organic search as a whole and the AI side of things. Are we in a post-duplicate content world for e-commerce SEO?
That is a really good point. It's because at the end of the day, you want now to rank chunks and passages. That the URL doesn't matter that much, isn't it?
You need the URL to find the chunk, but yeah.
Indeed. But if there's a little bit of additional information in these variations that might fulfill the user need for some specific facet query
just
or
slightly
characteristics,
better.
It will be worthy to find it. So interesting enough, two things, especially with this LLM TXT specification that some people want to move forward. When John Mueller was asked about that in the Google Search Central event in Madrid back in April, I was there, and he mentioned that it wouldn't solve a problem for them because they already have a really good crawling system, and now realizing like all of the handicaps and the challenges that new players, LLMs have. Indeed, in comparison, 100%. So findability, crawlability is not necessarily much of an issue at this point, but it's more about to control where they crawl more and what is worthy to crawl and what not, rather than they cannot even render the information at all at this point, right? Which is the problem, like a little bit of a bottleneck or a much like basic problem, I would say, in the process that all the LLMs have. Then regarding, I believe that is another thing. This is more of like a supply and demand type of assessment of them, if you ask me. So Google knows that, and if you see all of the filter sidebar options that they include there, they change based on the query. I imagine, of course, that they know very well, like, which are the type of characteristics and subtopics that people search for different topics and entities, and based on that, they will surface them or not. If they have identified that it will be useful for the user is likely to engage with those. If there's any search demand, any worthy search volume to target in there. And the same from the other side. They need to validate if they have enough content, enough information, enough products, inventory to surface for these sort of queries too. And for that, they need all of the URLs, even if they are not the canonical ones. They need to assess if how many of these players have a black related sneakers, even if they haven't been specified as the canonical ones, because realistically the description is the exact same one for all the colors. The only thing that changes is the color ID and the name of the color, and all of the other characteristics of the sneakers are the exact same ones, right? And so I imagine that it might have to do with that, and them understanding that is still useful for them to be able to identify those patterns and establish those URLs that are meaningful to showcase in the product pack to target those particular queries that have many times very important search demand, even if they are like very specific, very, very granular, which is why more and more I am incentivizing my clients to double down on PDPs. This is one of the recommendations that I gave during my talk at SEO Week about this topic, and I have done also at other events like Recommerce too. Is like, okay, it's that moment in from a few years ago in which, okay, let's optimize our PLPs, our facets, subfacets, to target and rank for all of these queries. Okay, I'm not saying that you should stop doing now, but take a look at all of your PDPs, all of that you are canonicalizing back to the single URL, and let's identify ways that you can differentiate them, that you can make them meaningful, highly specific to rank and target and satisfy the specific needs of the user looking for that particular variation. Beyond structured data, we know that structured data is not enough, realistically. Otherwise, at the end of the day, you also have like this, which is also very common for e-commerce websites, the indexability reports in the Google Search Console of 50 million URLs and 1 million actually being indexable, and the other ones crawl no index or alternate found that is the actual canonicals and things like that, right? You definitely don't want that. The ways that I am recommending clients to do that is, on one hand, leverage already a lot of the UGC that they already have, the Q&As, all the know-how, the information, the wealth of information that they have from the customer's experience, and how they can surface that more in a way that actually makes sense and at scale, and many solutions that integrate well and leverage AI now are allowed to do that also at scale, integrating with their database, crawling all of the pages on their own sites and so on. So that is done that can be done, or should be doable in a really good way, and also better configuring already the review system. So I'm not going to name names, but there is a very popular reviews and rating solution that a lot of the e-commerce platforms have out there, which by default lazy loads a lot of the reviews by default. By default, it's client-side render too.
So let's just spell that out for the audience briefly. So client-side rendered means it comes in JavaScript, and that means that it's invisible to the crawlers like ChatGPT's crawler or any of the new LLM crawlers for a start.
And by Google at scale. I mean, Google should should
Can,
be able,
maybe,
could
yeah.
be able to index that content well, but it depends, and there's a very big, it depends on your loading times, how long does it take to render. That's that bit of JavaScript on one hand, and how much of it is also lazy loaded, because a lot of
I was going to say that's the other
websites,
thing,
yeah.
right? So lazy loading, again, for anybody who's not familiar with the terminology, that means that you have to interact with the page in some way to make it load. You either have to scroll or click load more, or you have to do something. And Google by default isn't doing that, right? And so even if they can perfectly execute the JavaScript, which is a big if, they're not going to execute lazy loading stuff in general. So yeah, we're essentially saying here that these brands that you're talking about are putting a ton of effort into collecting gold dust. You know, there's really valuable review data, which is increasingly valuable in an LLM powered world, and then they're not showing it even to Google.
Yeah,
That's kind of what you're saying.
And not only for LLMs, but also for the shopping, the new shopping features, the product packs, the product knowledge panel, and so on, that surface more this type of content, PDPs, and you need to differentiate them. You need to show Google that they are worthy enough to index and to rank, and for which or what type of queries they should be rankable, right? And this is the type of information. So, and I understand that they cannot index all of a sudden 100 reviews in a single page. That makes it super, from a loading time perspective, wouldn't be necessarily also the best. However, here is where what I mentioned before regarding AI-related features, that, okay, summarize me, which is the sentiment.
This is probably the area that I'm most bullish on.
Yeah.
If you ask where should retailers or brands be deploying AI features right now, it's wherever you've got proprietary data. So you have data that nobody else has, and that might be reviews, for example, or it might be customer Q&A. But you've done that work. You've done that work to collect that data, and the raw data might be too large. Like you say, you don't necessarily want to put all 2,500 reviews on the page.
Yeah.
But you can extract that information, and you can put the summarized version on your page. And that's probably the single AI feature that I think is immediately most valuable right now.
Indeed. And better integration also of all the information that a lot of retailers have, but that are siloed in their own sections or areas. So like expert tips, expert reviews, rather than integrating them well in PDPs many times where these are worthy. It's like, why I want to integrate those informational content that will make the conversion worse. I don't want to dilute
that. Yeah.
Take the user out of the conversion journey, adding more noise, let's say, that is not purely commercial, right? And this type of thinking is like the type of thought process that I follow with clients is like, imagine if this is your salesperson, right? Like you want to be able to explain the product.
And the only page you get to show someone, right?
100%. And
Like,
this is the last
they're
step
not
of the
coming
process.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to convince the user at this pain and clarify all of the doubts, and let's be smart how you showcase it, how you refer it, how you open up even an additional window if more information is needed, so the user is not lost in their already commercial-oriented journey, but you need to surface that information somewhere, and here it's, in all practicality, is the best way. And let's test it, right? Which, by the way, your platform, this is what it does very, very well too. And I believe that in these scenarios, when doing this type of changes or recommendations with e-commerce clients, is like the most popular, potentially the most popular one, where the reaction is like, let's not touch it because of the impact that this will have on conversion or current conversion. It's like, and my approach is, let's test it. I have had scenarios that the hypothesis is pretty much the other way around. People say like, why are we adding already so much content? I was like, what? So much content? Like, we need to add more. We need to showcase.
Have you seen an Amazon product page? Yeah, exactly.
We need to add even more information. And they're like, no. Like, this is hurting speed. This is taking the user out of the conversion journey. Let's eliminate all of the similar products. Or let's eliminate this, what people are saying. Some of these are also negative, like why we want to put them out there. And the outcome of those tests that we ended up doing or supporting, that were not even SEO related ones, but purely from a conversion standpoint, just to be able to hold what we already had, pretty much is like, no, it wasn't helpful for you. It wasn't hurting. It was hurting. It was actually helping. So yes, the testing process here is important. That is my point. You share a lot of studies which are so very useful to showcase the importance of how context really matters for this, because it was interesting to see also that in your own SEO Week presentation, you had sometimes even examples
opposite results,
results, but work well in the wrong context, and it's because the context matter for sure.
Well, and that tied in actually to your presentation as well, because the second half of your presentation, you had a whole big dive into data where you showed by industry or by vertical the different kinds of features that were coming in. So showing that there's, in fashion or clothing versus electronics versus and that's a different mindset or different approach to ours, which is very much looking for a specific retailer running those tests, and you were looking across the vertical. But you've seen some of the same things, I think. What were the ones that I was most interested in? Presence of forum sites, for example. Our forums ranking, or are you seeing how are the image thumbnails presented? So I don't know if there were some of those that really stood out to you as being the most interesting or the most surprising.
Thank you very much for bringing this up, because in fact, across so many of these SERPs, Google is indeed giving visibility not only to the product packs. That it's true that they get potentially much more visibility, even above default, even above the top traditional SERPs in any case. But there has been like some of the biggest increases in the last year based on the data that I analyzed, was not only for this product packs or product shopping knowledge panels that come with the product packs at the end of the day too, but for images and UGC. And I can understand Google, the reason of why they want to also showcase this. Another one is the Explore Brands sort of features, because indeed the brand recognition, the trust of the user at that point of the journey is important too, and the authority, which is yet another point to optimize for from a brand standpoint, and targeting and showcasing more signals to make your brand entity, let's say, stronger and more authoritative. But in particular, image optimization, we know that is important not only for PDPs, but also at PLP level, categories, facets, because where categories and facets are ranked, they usually have a thumbnail too. They come with a thumbnail. Again, here the over-reliance on client-side render JavaScript or poor image optimization here matters a lot. So pretty basic, technical SEO, let's say, here's is fundamental to troubleshoot that. Then, of course, how specific are your images for the specific facets that you are showing? If you are, indeed, you have a facet that is an indexable facet for black pants, black skinny jeans. For you, is a very long tail specific sub facet, but realistically, if you take a look at the search volumes of this, mind-blowingly high, is super high. So it's very worthy for you to go and take a look at which are those thumbnails that you are optimizing for those particular facets. And of course, it will tend to be the first image of the listings or one
Well,
of
it's
the
often
few
been a
images.
disconnect. I think those different systems,
yeah.
you see the same with sometimes like the one box, pre-AI overview one boxes, where you'd get the wrong image ranking next to the text. I think we really need to give Google all the signals that we can, because it's often been quite hard to join up the dots between the canonical image and the canonical URL, I think. So
Indeed.
yeah, that's certainly true. I had one really tactical question actually for you, which is, you talked about the testing, and obviously our customers are always trying to come up with new hypotheses, new ideas of things that they could test. When you think about the PDP improvements in particular, what are you seeing in terms of the effect of on-page content versus on-page structured data versus the information that's in the merchant feed, in the product listing? How are you seeing those things kind of interplay? And if you could only change one of them, which one are you leaning on?
I try to keep parity as much as possible, because
To keep them
sometimes,
lined up.
that is actually an issue, the lack of parity or the perceived parity from Google, right? Especially when over relying again on JavaScript for some things, Google is not able to catch them quite highly. But if I will need to prioritize something to change right away, the feed, because that is what, unfortunately, for many websites, especially those that are very, very large, and Google not necessarily crawl as fast as they should.
Not crawl all of it, right?
Well, all of it, or refresh all of the inventory, or if the inventory is refreshing or changing a lot.
Yeah, and prices and offers, I suppose, is that there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. This is where I will try to prioritize if there are like resources limitations. But parity, I will say, is important here.
Yeah, because historically, I think we felt like what's on the page takes preference in the regular search results. So if you imagine a PDP just ranking in 10 blue links, then that is often going to be enhanced by the structured data that's on the page. But the popular products grid is much more likely to be powered by the Merchant Center feed, I think. But there's all kinds of organizational complexities, because the Merchant Center feed powers advertising as well. So does the SEO team even own it? I don't. Have you seen organizational challenges with getting this done?
Well, realistically, in this case, funnily enough, it was very straightforward to have access and see the feeds, because there were also in many cases already, ad or paid type of actions taking place on those, and having all of the insights to that data. It was rather interesting to see what was already working well from a paid standpoint and from a conversion standpoint, and take that into consideration to prioritize things. But yes, there are certain, let's say, executions that if you have the paid data to support you, not necessarily because of permissions, but more about investment, or where you should double down or put your priorities to, it will be rather helpful, or it's very, very helpful to show that data as well. But thankfully, I haven't seen that much of like a, let's say, clash between areas for that, I believe. And I believe that it has to do with the fact that you have the data there. You have it's very performance focused. It's less of an opinion. So it is much more easy to show proof the importance or not.
Almost the data came first, which is unusual. Normally we have the interface, the web search results first, and then you get the data maybe sometimes later, like we're seeing with AI overviews in Search Console.
Indeed. Speaking about tests and performance, or how you connect those with performance and show values, something that was, on the other hand, much more difficult for me in the past, or has been historically, for example, than connecting or aligning with PPC, is more of like social and community driven type of activity. And the importance became much more obvious when seeing all of the search features related with the forum, related mentions and visibility. It's like, oh, what is impacting,
that drives us,
what gets attention, but many times it's like product pack, and below what is said of your brand about the web, or pretty much feed from forum results and seeing that all of a sudden half of them are not even positive about your brand. So if in a very visible way, quite prominently, there are so many negative mentions about your brand coming from forums, or there are mixed results, or where you are not clarifying, not even negative, but you are not clarifying what are the right features or the right way to think about this, etc. It can end up being harmful for your brand overall, right? So showing that and showing the visibility and the impact that this might have, even if it's not a user that end up clicking on buying right away, but will be impacted from that in your customer journey. That is much more difficult to show. You can show the visibility. You can show that how much traffic this results from Reddit to party reviews get, and you are not from those SERPs. For example, again, I use data from SimilarWeb showing, like, take a look at all where the clicks go, not only the visibility, but the clicks go for this type of queries. Half of them or less than half are actually going to product related content, but the other half is going here. And what are these pages saying about your product or your brand, right? So it's important to align here, to be able to have some efforts to, well, put the sentiment in the right place and to clarify and so on. So, but that is a little bit trickier, but as important, not only because of the visibility it has in SERPs now for a lot of the product or shopping related queries and SERPs, but also how is that taken into account again in LLMs? And
I was going to say that's going to transition us into the promise, the AI part, because I think the kind of the fan out query that we've started hearing about, this idea that when you, especially in AI mode, and I think it's the same in research mode in some of the pure LLM players, this idea that you've done your one search, but before answering you, the system is going to go and do a whole load of other searches, some of which are going to be explicitly designed to look up reviews, to look up brand sentiment, to look up feedback and ratings and all these other things. Those are the searches that the machine is going to do behind the scenes to aggregate the recommendations back to the user, I think. And as I said right at the very top, one of the things I've been enjoying the most about your work recently is that you're one of the few people putting out practical suggestions of what people should actually do. Because it's all very well tracking how visible you are, or like telling you how you've done, but seeing how do I do better? And I think folks in particular should check out your piece on SEO versus GEO and the follow-up. I think it was the follow-up called the content optimization checklist. Both of those pieces have really shaped some of my thinking about this. And I'm curious how you're thinking about this as a moment in time, right? It's very exciting for people who've been in the industry for a long time, because we like change, we like novelty, we like digging into how these things work, and we anticipate more change. So in particular, in your SEO versus GEO work, you are directly comparing traditional search versus LLM search. Do you think that distinction is going to exist in a year's time? Or do you think everything kind of converges and actually even the blue links are powered by some form of kind of AI behind the scenes?
At the end of the day, that's a really good point. At the end of the day, I believe that it will converge. That I mean, I can completely understand why, and Google at this point has it as a separate product.
Well, they're testing it, sure.
Obviously, yes, and only when they are able to validate that they can make as much money or even more than with the current ads business that they have in SERPs, they will end up even releasing it as the default experience that users get in the SERPs. And if that doesn't work, let's see an alternative, right? But this is where we are right now. Then we see a lot of this, let's say, debates and thinking in the community about saying, oh, you don't need to do anything else. It's only more of the same. The principles are there. For how long we have had like semantic understanding or matching.
Right. It's not just about keywords on a page.
It's and it's true. It's not true that we have come from SEO in 2005 doing keyword stuff into where we are today, because many comparisons that I have seen out there is like try to showcase a comparison in that way.
Yeah.
It's obviously not like the pillars, let's say, and the concepts and a lot of the criteria and configurations are there. Crawlability, indexability, yes, is there too. What it changes is, on one hand, because of the interface, is the behavior of the user, right? So and the personalization level too. And I believe that we only have seen the tip of the iceberg from that regard.
For sure.
It's only going to become even bigger. And good luck trying to track at scale as we have been doing with the search.
I don't think really. I've been talking about not only the end of rankings, but the end of queries, really, because the idea that if you go all the way back, we thought of queries as being this thing that it almost existed separate to the searcher. There's millions of people doing this query when we're talking 1 word, 2 words queries. When you're talking about a paragraph, that query has probably never been seen before. These are probably all unique. And of course they have similarities and they have themes and they have through lines that you can join them together with. But fundamentally, they are not the same query, I don't think. And we've seen that. So Sundar Pichai said recently on one of the earnings calls that they've started seeing people type paragraphs into the Google search box. And I think that's probably the user behavior is changing.
And not only that, but because of the target and the retrieval style, so the ranking chunks and passages rather than overall topically connected pages. And I have seen that a lot with the data that, again, SimilarWeb is giving of top pages of any site. But it has one of the biggest changes that I have seen going through my e-commerce clients have been that usually right now, if you go to the top performing terms for your PDPs, you will see the brand and the characteristics, very specific. So if you have an iPhone 15 or 14 or whatever, it will be the name of the product plus the characteristic plus the color, something very, very specific that will tend to drive traffic to that particular PDP. I am seeing a lot of the top prompts given traffic to PDPs being very informational, being the type of queries or prompts that will be ranked by reviews, guides, or comparisons in the SERPs, in the traditional SERPs. But because the PDP is very, let's say, enriched or very optimized with UGC, with reviews information, with top expert tips, and so on, the LLM has taken that passage, that chunk, that snippet of content and highlighted
shown that to the user already. So the user's already read that bit of the page.
Yes.
And now they're being sent to the
synthesis, and they quote and they cite and link to that PDP as a reference of the answer that they provide to the user.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you cannot...
The PDP then is almost the canonical source for that information, which works very well for a retailer, obviously.
100%. It is like that. Then I have also seen in more guides-related content that, for example, if you are a retailer that sells shoes, again, you very likely have like a few guides regarding how to take care of the shoes or how to choose the best for this scenario or this use case or not. And usually the type of queries for those are also, on the other hand, very informational. Best of or comparison, this versus that. Is the other way around. For a few of those guides or more informational content, I am seeing prompts about that you could consider to be very specific or very commercially driven regarding pros and cons or characteristics of a certain product to buy.
Of the actual product, right. Yeah.
And usually you will have expected PDP to be showcased for that or to rank for that in the SERPs, traditional SERPs. It will be certainly likely that, but then in this case, because in a guide you actually mention and did a comparison or showcase this particular comparison, well, it is extracted from there for
really
the answer synthesis process. So again, I believe that the transactional versus informational, how we structure what we expect in terms of traffic and user behavior, how it matches with our web structure, how it matches with user behavior, will be much more blended with LLMs, indeed.
Which ties into something that we don't have time to get into today, but something I've been thinking a lot about is obviously when we're running our tests, we're saying this is better than the previous way. You know, the outcome of test is this is better than the other way. What it doesn't do is talk about long-term trends and reconciling those things. So kind of saying, yes, but the clicks you were getting in 2023 might be totally different clicks to the clicks you get in 2026 because the user has done a different amount of research before coming to your website. They're landing on a different page on your website. They've seen different content before they come. And the year-over-year comparisons, I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole that we don't have time to go into, but it's kind of mind-blowing that I think we're losing so much of that through line that compares last year to this year or this year to next year. And I think a lot of businesses are going to even if they're doing great, are going to struggle with that lack of measurement.
Yeah, indeed. Not only the to easily forecast that we know that especially decision makers love to do, but also to be able to attribute, and this is a tricky part, the revenue and investment, what type of content, where is this really search, or can we consider this to be purely from organic search? So it's much trickier, and indeed this is without entering into personalization. Again, like if LLMs start taking into account your whole history and conversations, if they
learn to give them more explicit context. You know, we do type out that paragraph of what we're looking for, why, what we've already done, you know, all those kinds of things. I think there's so much ahead in some of those areas, but they've also got a lot of catching up to do, you know, with lessons that Google's already learned around freshness, spam filtering, geolocation. You know, I think the localization of some of these tools is terrible until you explicitly tell them, you know, I'm in the UK or whatever. You actually, anyway. As I said, we don't have time to. Maybe there's a follow-up conversation that we should schedule, because I almost feel like we've got another hour to do. But I'm conscious of your time, and this has been super valuable and very, very interesting. What are you working on right now? And I'm assuming that if you want to follow you, SEO FOMO is the best call to action. But where should people go to find out what you're working on?
Yes, so they can go to my website, of course, aleydasolis.com. SEO FOMO, which is my weekly SEO news newsletter, if you want to keep up with all of this and more. I have also a new newsletter that is called AI Marketers, where I cover not only the AI search, but also in marketing in general, the impact of AI and the latest news and resources and features that are worthy to keep up and to monitor.
Super valuable, because it's changing so fast. So people should definitely check that out.
And expect more resources from me about this. Well, you mentioned the checklist and comparisons to make it, let's say, more grounded for everybody to understand, especially decision makers. I believe that they are hearing everywhere and anywhere, GEO, AIO, whatever you want to call it. Realistically, for me, it's more of a package to sell it in different ways and communicate value. But realistically, what I believe that if we want to stop those like SEO is dead or whatever mentions like GEO is a completely new thing, it's not.
But we also need to make it concrete and say these are the things you do.
100%. Right? And this is what we're doing. This is how it overlaps. This is how it is evolving, and these are the ways that we can start move forward. It doesn't mean that it's bulletproof. I mean, I remember when I started doing SEO. And I think that you started around that same time. Is it 2006, 2007, right? we have an amount of information right now and guidelines from search engines, some of them more specific than others, let's say, and we can trust more than others. But in any way, we have like this amount of information that I think that for a lot of us, it make us feel like we are sure many times to say this or that. Back in the day, we didn't, and that is why we had SEO Moz and Webmaster Wars, the forums, the exchange, and to test a lot of things.
Yes. And actually, you're right. It feels more like that era than it has at any time since for me.
Yeah.
Which
so I think it's exciting. I think
so
exciting,
too.
and it's a time to do a lot of tests, to validate a few things yourself and see if it works in your context too. And so there is a little bit of a plug to your platform too, to SearchPilot, because that is perfect also to test in that regard, to have in that regard to do this type of test too.
Yeah, for sure. We feel like we've been building for this moment, because the uncertainty is exactly what we're for. So that's probably a good place to wrap. Thank you, Aleyda. Thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And that's been a really fun and informative conversation. So yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was fun.